Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and welcome to our list of our most anticipated games for Essen Spiel 2023.
We're going to Essen!
We're going to Essen for the first time ever. And what are some words that people have used to describe Essen to us?
It's different.
Different
it's
comes
interesting.
up. Interesting.
It's very much it's an exhibit, like what do you call it? Sales. Like it's very much a trade show is what I think the other.
And also these festival elements of like lots of kids and like lots of kind of carnival. Yeah. Intriguing.
Yeah, very intrigued.
Can't wait to check it out. Have no idea what to expect based on those descriptions.
Also huge.
Yes.
Like, the scale of it is quite large.
But I'm really excited because if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I like to buy games and I like to research games. And so this is, one of I think the biggest release of new games for the year. Lots of publishers work up to releasing at this con. So there were so many games for us to look through, and there's probably going to be more that, will come out and be revealed just prior to Essen Spiel. So keep your eye on that. But I do want to say just before we get into our list that we won't be including any games that we mentioned in our anticipated or post-Gen Con reviews of those games. So yes, there will be some games being released at Essen Spiel as well that were, demoed at Gen Con.
Yeah.
But
or even available for sale, like a sort of sneaky little, small batch.
A small batch,
sale.
yeah. So we won't be mentioning any of those. This is a fresh list.
Yeah.
But because of that, there are a few games that I just want to mention, and this is how I sneak more into a 10 list. I just keep adding reasons to talk about other games, but there are 4 games in particular that we want to talk about. The first one is Kutná Hora, which was our #1 most anticipated game of Gen Con.
Yeah.
And we haven't spoken about it on the channel, but we did get an opportunity to sit down and play a game of it.
Yeah, we got a demo of it, so we got to experience it, at least obviously the first game.
Yes, with cardboard rhinos,
Yeah,
so Eleni, which was amazing because she took time out of her busy schedule to take us through the game. And we really enjoyed our first play of it. We have not played it enough to explore all elements of the game, but we played it enough to know that we will be buying it at Essen Spiel. So putting that on the list and just letting everyone know that we are still intend to pick that up and review it. So that's one of them. Now the other 2 are 2 little gems that we really enjoyed and we've reviewed from Gen Con.
Oh yeah, so that'd be Sky Teams.
Sky Team,
which,
great co-op. Dice placement.
Yes.
Where you're trying to co-pilot a game, 2-player only.
Yeah.
But really
co-pilot a plane, not a game. I mean, you are sort of trying to
pilot a game?
Co-pilot a game.
Oh.
You are co-piloting both a game, but the game is to
about
try
a plane.
Land the plane in all these different airports.
A playing game.
It's a playing game. That's what it is. And the other one is Forest Shuffle.
Yes.
Which is, again, we also covered individually, quite a surprise in terms of how much we ended up connecting with it.
And we're still playing it. We love that game.
Yeah.
So Forest Shuffle is the other one. And one more that I want to talk about, which is a grail game for a lot of people, and that is Nokosu Dice. And this is my #1 trick-taking game of all time. I love this game. You are basically playing out a hand of cards as well as different coloured dice that make up almost like a second hand of cards. It's really cool. They're releasing the reprint of this at Essen Spiel. And I've got a friend that's been hunting this down for a long time, and so I'll be picking up a copy for him.
Under instructions.
But
get some copies.
But technically, will I buy myself another copy?
Well, we have a copy.
May or may not.
Why would we need another copy? I guess for gifts.
No, there definitely won't be any room in our suitcase, and you're about to find out why. Because we're going to move into our list, starting with, of course, some bonus extras, our honourable mentions. My first honourable mention, and I have got 2, and Maggie's got 1.
I got
not
1.
surprising.
Yeah.
But my first honourable mention was on my list, but I really struggled to find out too much information about this game. It's a roll and write called Tequila. Now, in this game, my understanding of it is it takes about 40 minutes to play, and it's more in that mid-weight type roll and write experience, which, roll and writes tend to be on the lighter side. So I do welcome a slightly longer experience in roll and writes. and this one is about, one of my favorite topics, tequila. We don't actually, I should say, we don't actually drink that much, but when I do drink, my drink of choice is tequila.
That's the one spirit.
It is. I really do like it, in moderation, of course.
Yes. Responsibly.
But we've been to Tequila, the region in Mexico. We've been able to witness like the production, the distillation of tequila, the agave, the huge agave ovens where they caramelize the agave. Amazing.
Still have like the agave syrup because it's kind of like a maple syrup. It's sort of that sort of thick, and it's so delicious, and it's apparently
makes a great margarita.
Apparently even better from like a glycemic point, so like it doesn't raise your blood sugar. Anyway, lots of benefits from agave.
But I love this. This is purely a theme choice. I just I saw it. I love the cover artwork.
I know.
Theme.
What is going on?
But it didn't make the list because I couldn't find out enough about it mechanically. But it does seem like you are doing all the steps of the production process all the way through to creating different variants of tequila and then selling them at the market. So just really interested to go and check that out and probably purchase it because of the theme. But that's my caveat. I don't know anything else about it.
My honorable mention is a game that is going to be only available for demo, and it's called Dreamworld, and it's a card-only game, and it's a bit of a spin-off or like a successor or part of the same universe of Unconscious Mind. So they're essentially taking the dreams element of Unconscious Mind and turning it into a card game and bringing a lot of that artwork, the beautiful artwork of Unconscious Mind, and all the sort of the dreams and the unconscious world. And so this is going to be, I believe, obviously a much faster, much more streamlined gaming experience where you're trying to help your clients interpret their dreams as a way of as a therapeutic approach. Don't really know much else in terms of how it plays, but it seems fairly straightforward. Johnny Pack is the designer, who is also obviously one of the designers of Unconscious Mind. So that's my honorable mention. Keen to check it out.
And he's a great designer too, so I'm excited to see what they do mechanically with this. And I'm actually really happy that they're reusing that art of the combination of Andrew Bosley and Vincent Dutrait was such a magical combination in Unconscious Mind. So
that was so good.
It's so good that they're not putting this art to waste and they're using it again in another game. So that's only a demo, but should say that every other game on this list, on our actual top 10, should be available for sale. So unless something goes wrong, we think that most of these games should be there for sale. So that's very exciting about the rest of our list. Now, my next you
have another.
I do. Mention. I have one more to squeeze in. And that is a game that I had no idea that was coming. And it's actually the collector's edition of Welcome to.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so this is going to be a bigger box than, of course, the original Welcome to, because this one is going to include all of the expansions that have come out since the original base game. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, this is one of my, if not my favorite, roll and write games. I absolutely adore Welcome to. However, I will say, two things. This is the French edition that's coming out at Essen Spiel. However, they've said that it will you'll be able to get an English rulebook if you purchase it. So, and because the game is language independent,
it's mostly icons.
It should.
The iconography is pretty good.
That's clear. Right. Yeah, it shouldn't matter. So that's one thing. But I'm not really one for playing the expansions. I don't know if it's because we don't get the game to the table as often because we're always playing other new games. But when I get it to the table, there's something about the base game Welcome to that I really love. So for the expansions, I'm not in. But get this. Just in the little fine print, they noted that it's also going to include a new base game map illustrated by a number of guest illustrators.
Okay.
So Beth Sobel.
Nice, yeah.
Vincent Dutrait. And also, I believe, Webison Santiago, who is who did all the design work for Sail, the recent trick-taking game, for one of the games that's on my list that I'll mention later, for Bloody Inn.
Bloody Inn,
yeah.
So I love that aesthetic.
Love his style as well. Yeah. And so being able to have these refreshed base maps. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to buy a complete...
Hey, do they just sell that? Because it's like, that's all you really want.
That's all you really need. I mean,
component.
you wouldn't buy an entire collector's edition just to get those maps.
I mean, one wouldn't.
Or would you?
You maybe would.
I mean,
You're a collector. Like,
no, I have to see them in person.
Okay.
And then think of how many other things I could get rid of if I had it all in one collector's edition. Anyway, we'll discuss this.
I'm unconvinced.
We'll discuss this off camera. Anyway, that's our honourable mentions. Now let's get into our top 10.
So let's start with my number 10, which is Freaky Frogs from Outer Space. It's a mouthful. And this is a solo game by Friedman Fries, who's also the designer of one of my other favorite solos, Friday. And so this actually kind of has a little bit of a similar feel. So what's happening in this one is a pinball kind of theme type game where you're actually going to be using cards as the way to essentially mimic the what do you call the little pinball
flippers?
Arms? Yeah, the flippers.
Yes.
And so apparently the game is one of those games that you will get better at it over time. So you will become hopefully a pinball wizard, and your skill will improve. But you will have also those instances where if luck is against you, you may not even get a chance to hit those flippers. Like that ball's going to come straight through and you miss everything. So it's
What's it got to do with the frogs?
I believe the frogs are probably going to be the theme of the pinball machine.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't able to kind of get much more than that.
I mean, they love the colour green, so it makes sense.
Yes.
It works from a cover perspective.
I don't know what makes them, freaky or wife. Well, they're from outer space.
And also Fs, because all of the game titles.
Yeah. So that's so because I love Friday so much, and it is very much it's a solo, essentially hand management using cards. This I feel like it's going to be in a similar kind of space, and so I'm very intrigued and very keen to check it out.
Does it come in a tiny box like Friday?
I imagine so. Yeah, it looks like the box is. Yeah, it looks like the box is smallish, but I obviously haven't seen it, haven't played it. I don't know, but I'm excited. So that's my number 10.
Now, my number 10 is a little surprise because it's a cooperative game. And yes, I know we can't keep saying that we don't play co-ops because
we need to retire that saying now.
They keep appearing on the channel.
Yeah.
But this one is because it used to be a competitive game. So this is a new version of the theme and trick-taking game, Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes. So Jekyll versus Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde. It's now called Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
So in this game, you are playing as both Jekyll and Hyde, and you are trying to balance both of those two characters, which are just you. You're trying to not overplay either side of your personality.
Talk about a spoiler there.
What?
And they're both you. That's the story of Jekyll versus Hyde. It's like the dark side of life.
Yeah. But anyway.
Well, and if they didn't, it's been spoiled.
I might have to put a spoiler alert on this channel.
It's fine.
But in this game, you are trying to evade the police. And so you are actually working together, and this is a cooperative trick-taking game. So something similar to maybe like The Crew, because the reason why I'm comparing it to The Crew is because this is a narrative-driven game. So I'm finding all of these things really interesting. Obviously, the original Jekyll versus Hyde, the two-player trick-taking game was really cool because it had this push-pull between the two characters where you were playing against each other. But this one still has that push-pull element of it going in either swaying towards Jekyll or swaying towards Hyde, but you don't want to do that because you don't want to raise suspicion with the police. So I can see how that would easily kind of convert over to a co-op. And then the whole story card deck element, I have no idea how that's going to work, and I'm intrigued to find out. And I love the artwork of this game. So this game, all the cards are done again by Vincent Detrate. Really, really beautiful production. If you are interested in this game, I know they have a limited pre-order through Mandu Games, the South Korean board game company, so a publisher. So get on their website and maybe put that on pre-order if you are interested, because I'm not sure how many copies they will have. But that's my number 10.
My number 9 is a game called, I think you pronounce it Mycelia, and which is, I believe, linked to like mycelium, like the fungi that are underneath the earth. And this game, I think the thing that attracted me to it the most is just the artwork. It just looks so beautiful, but also the theme, like you're essentially, it's a deck builder. Actually, that's another big
I
selling
saw this
point.
and I was like, it's so cute and it's a deck builder. I was like, this is 100% going to be on Maggie's list.
Yes. So, well, and it is, there it is. So it's a deck builder where you are trying to essentially recruit or engage the different creatures in the forest to help you remove dewdrops from your from your board or from your area, so that you can take them to the Shrine of Life as I believe kind of like as an offering to the goddess, the forest goddess. And so it like all the little components, like there's got this sort of beautiful central sort of raised area. I don't know what you call it, which is where you're kind of putting a lot of the dewdrops, and the dewdrops themselves, the component, like it looks quite kind of tactile and kind of cool, and just the artwork looks so cool. And so I think my concern is that it's probably going to be a little bit on the lighter side.
Yeah, that's why it didn't make it onto my list, as I thought it might be a little light for us.
Yeah, but I'm very, very keen
beautiful
to check it out. Yeah, so that's my number 9, Mycelia.
Well, my number 9 is a game that Maggie is guaranteed to dislike.
Oh boy.
Because it is a game about a game.
I know what this is.
Match of the Century. Now, this game is a 2-player only game that's meant to be the spiritual successor to Watergate. Different designer. But this is a 2-player only game that's very much all about kind of the historical moment of in 1972 when America versus the Soviet Union in the World Chess Championships. But you're not playing chess. So I just find this such an intriguing theme, because they've made a game about what happened in a game. In another championship of a game. Yes. Okay. But the way this game plays out is that you're going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to be playing these cards down. And all these cards, actually, they have the name of different chess pieces. But they don't act like a chess piece does.
This is so confusing.
Yeah, I know. So they don't act like a chess piece does. There's also like your point marker is a giant chess king.
Okay.
So it's like
an actual king.
So it's really cool, actually, the way that they've done the production, because, and then you're moving pawns as well, just not in a game of chess.
Okay.
So you've got pawns and there's the king.
Yes.
And then you're playing cards that represent the other pieces. But what you're doing is you're placing a card down in kind of a head-to-head battle. So each one of you is putting a card down. If you go first, obviously, you're going to be playing a card down that's of a certain value. I don't know why I said obviously, because I'm explaining it. But the other person, what is obvious is that this person who plays second now has the advantage of knowing what you've played.
Yeah,
right?
Obviously.
So they can play down a card that's going to beat that card in value if they want, and then they will win that area. But the choice that they have to make is, if they beat you in that battle, you get to activate the card's ability.
Oh, okay.
So, but whereas if they let you
nothing
win...
like chess.
Nothing like... It's nothing like chess. Okay. It's like meant to be an abstraction of the battle that went on. Okay. But also, apparently, well, you can read a lot more about the actual game, because this game comes with this huge booklet that's all about the historical context and the political importance of the match. So that's really cool, because obviously there's a lot of research that's gone into this game. But yes, the game is not chess, but that's how it's playing out. So you're trying to make these difficult decisions about whether you want to let that person take the win, just so that they can't play out this like really important ability that they have, this really cool ability that they have. Also, similar to Watergate, you are you've got this tug of war element that's happening. So you're winning these battles to move a piece that's like towards you or further away. Yeah. And then if you win that tug of battle each round, you're getting to move your king ahead. So you're trying to do that over and over to win the game.
So what it was, quite literally about the meta game. So it's like, it's the commentary on, like, obviously there's the actual game, but then what's the meta game of everything else, and that's what the tug of war.
Is that you interested in a game about chess?
I'm actually now a little bit somewhat vaguely intrigued.
I've kind of sold you on it. I like that.
Mostly because my mind, this is where my mind is going. I'm wondering, is this the same, it might be the same chess game that Chess the Musical is based on?
Yes.
Sold. Well, just like, if you get it, I will play it once to try it out.
While listening to the
soundtrack of Chess and
Great.
Musical.
Okay. If you're going to pick up this game, you will end up at the same booth as another game that everyone's looking out for. So at Deep Print Games, the publisher, there is a game called Moorland, and this is my way of sneaking additional games into the list. But in Moorland, you are building out a waterway network to allow these tokens to like drift through the network, and I couldn't find out too much information about it. It looked a little bit abstract even for me. It just looked a bit like, I'm not sure if I'll enjoy it. I may pick it up if I'm there picking up Match of the Century.
So is this like an official honorable mention?
No.
No, nothing. No, it's just like I just mentioned it in passing conversation.
Yeah, just happened to come up.
Cool.
And I had it written down. Okay, on to your number 8.
So my number 8 is a game called Witchcraft, which is actually a solo game by the same designer as Undaunted and Resist, which we haven't really played, what are highly
rated. And
rated.
Undaunted in particular gets recommended to us all the time, but we're just not into like war-themed games, and so we've never played them.
Yeah.
And I was so excited when I saw this come up with the artwork because it's stunning.
Yeah, the artwork is pretty cool as
and
well.
The designer, and I was like, finally! And then I realized it was solo.
It's a solo game, yeah. Well, I think we probably could kind of play it together-ish. It's like nil interest. If I don't get to play against you, I'm not interested. So in this game, you're actually going to be managing it's a car-based, apparently very fast-paced, and that was actually one of the things that I was like, it apparently plays fairly quickly in like under 20 minutes or something like that, and which I was like, I almost kind of wanted it to be meatier than that, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. But so in this one, you're actually you've got this sort of coven of witches who are trying to protect the village from all these sort of things that are kind of happening and going wrong. At the same time, obviously, you're trying to kind of maintain your identity, decide when you're going to have to take actions that reveal your identity versus when you're going to keep your identity a bit concealed, which means that you're going to be playing actions that are less powerful, but you get to kind of get those witches back in your hand and use them multiple times. As soon as you kind of play one of those really, really strong actions that will reveal yourself, it means you kind of are eliminating that witch. There's this other element to the game where you're also kind of managing I don't know if it's like the expectations or how the villagers see you, because there's going to be a trial as well at the end, and you don't necessarily know. You're kind of mitigating against the things that are going to be, I don't know what the resource is, sort of against you to make sure that you survive the trial. So you are having to kind of survive or make sure that you're protecting the village and the villagers enough, because I believe if 5 villagers die, then you also lose the game. But at the same time, making sure that you're doing that, then that you'll make it through the trial. So it's kind of like are you a witch? Well, I can explain. So it's like sometimes I was like, no. And then sometimes like, yeah, I did do that magical thing, but it was for your own good. So I'm intrigued by this because it does look, the artwork is really...
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's obviously, I believe the system that you're using is very similar to the system used in Resist. Again, we haven't played that.
It's a re-implementation of Resist.
Yeah. So we haven't played that. So it would be new to us. But yeah, keen to check it out.
I'm glad that made your list. I'm excited to see how it works. Not play it with you. Now, my number 8 is actually higher on Maggie's list, so I'm going to let her talk about that and instead go straight into my number 7, which is a little card game called Knarr. Now, interesting backstory to this game is that we actually saw it and they had a demo available of it at Gen Con, and it just happened to be bad timing every time we walked past the booth that we didn't have time to sit down, and they kept saying, come over, try this game, Bombix, the publisher, and we just didn't get a chance to play it. But I did note that it looked beautiful on the table. The illustrations of this Viking world.
The aesthetic is really cool.
Really, really pretty. And now that I have read more about the rules of this game, suffice to say, I'm really upset with myself for not sitting down to play it. Yeah. And now clearly I'm going to have to buy it at Essen Spiel. But this game is a card game, but there's a lot of tough choices in this game because what you're going to be doing is playing a card of a particular, so you've got these Viking cards and you're going to be playing a card of a particular suit down into a tableau of cards of the suits that you have in front of you. So for example, I can add a red card to my red collection of cards, and what it does is it triggers all of those previously placed red cards to give me loads of resources. So then I'll be like putting all these resources away. But depending on which colored card you put down into your tableau, that also dictates which card you get to bring back into your hand to refresh that card from a market of cards. So maybe I want to play the red card, but the red slot where I'm getting a new card from is giving me a suboptimal card. So the first decision is, well, okay, put down that one and I'm going to pick up this one. Then there's this really interesting dynamic because you are also collecting locations that you're going to be sailing to, I believe, sorry if that theme is wrong, with your Viking boat. And so you also want to draft from another market these location cards, but they're going to cost you cards in your tableau. So this engine that you're building up is going to be destroyed when you want to grab these new locations, but then you want to build up the locations because when you trigger that whole set of locations that you've collected, you're going to be getting lots and lots of benefits. But the trick to all this is the resources that you need to trigger the locations are also the resources coming from your tableau.
So just to forward one step back sort of thing.
So everything is like mixed in. And I can already see just the tension of like, oh, I'll get that location that's going to destroy all my hard work that I've put into collecting these cards. And then, so it's about the timing of, you know, when you take the different actions. So I'm just really intrigued to see how that all comes together. And it's really beautiful.
And it doesn't look like a huge box or anything.
No, it's a small box. We've seen them. They're kind of like almost, I think, tarot-sized cards though. But yeah, it is really beautiful. I'm really interested to check that out. That is my number 7, Knarr.
My number 7 is a game called Rats of Wistar, where you are trying to escape. So you're all rats trying to escape the Wistar Institute. And so you're trying to show your, I guess, your leadership acumen and trying to figure out, like, you're sort of partly exploring through this farm, gaining access to eventually like the pantry, grabbing cheese, but at the same time you're also developing your lair, so digging up additional rooms, building beds, even sort of, it sounds like almost recruiting some of the locals and the natives that you might come across and make them kind of part of your family. And all of this, obviously, it's actually going to be a worker placement Euro game. One of the designers, it's a kind of designing team. One of the designers is Simone Luciani, which there's a lot of different games that we really, really enjoyed that are Luciani designs. So it's actually, even though the theme sounds kind of like a lighter and, you know, semi, not whimsical, but just sort of like a lighter, like amusing sort of theme. The gameplay looks a little bit, definitely meatier. So it's a worker placement game. You've got this really interesting central wheel where you're going to be, like, that's where you're going to be like kind of placing your workers for actions. But at the same time, all the sections in the wheel corresponds to different areas in the broader board. And you're going to be also, there's going to be some of your meeples, other meeples that get allocated to those broader areas. And so the action that you take in that central wheel, the power of that action will depend on how much influence or how many of those of your meeples you had in that section. So I think that's going to be an interesting sort of some adding to the mix. And then there's going to be things like events and a little bit of kind of, I imagine, a bit of engine building. Apparently you're trying to also make use of some of the human artifacts to sort of bend them to your will or create something new. So I'm intrigued by how all of that would play out.
This was on my short list purely from design perspective and the worker placement element. I wasn't sure how heavy it would be, but I feel like it might be mid-weight.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a mid-weight game. I actually quite enjoy the theme. I'm amused by the theme. It cute. Looks like, and the aesthetic of it also looks quite cute. I'm concerned it might put some people off because they might assume that it's quite light, but maybe
that's what I thought when I first saw it. I was like, is this going to be meaty enough? And then I went into it and then I was like, yes, but then I was like, I don't know if it's just a weird thought, like, is it dry enough to be a Euro?
think it's the dryness. The dryness does not make the euro.
It does not. But I'm so used to a lot of euros having like a theme that I'm not that into, so not paying so much attention to it.
Having to like carry on through a theme that you're like not invested. But it's like this was like, oh, this is great. So I'm excited to kind of check this out and see if if it scratches that euro itch. So that is Rats of Wistar, my number 7.
Funnily enough, my number 6 is also a game by Simone Luciani, amongst others, I believe. It is Sea Dragons.
Okay.
And this game has beautiful art, again, by Webison Santiago. It's gorgeous, the cover, which first, of course, is what attracted to me. And then when I was looking at the photos, it's like, oh, hang on, look at those sea dragon meeples. They are so cool. And the way this game works is it's fairly abstract because you're going to be placing down pieces of a sea dragon onto this grid-like space that has, I think 4 different areas that you're trying to control. And the way that you're going to be doing that is by playing cards that have like polyomino shapes on them. So you have to place your dragon according to the shape of the card that you're playing. I think you can also add to your dragons. I'm not sure about that, but basically what you're trying to do is this is something I liked about it. Is remember that old game Snake that you have on your mobile?
Yes.
Back in the day on the Nokias?
Yeah.
Where you can't like touch your tail.
Yeah. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you're like, don't bite your tail, don't bite your tail.
That's not really what happens here. But you can't place a sea dragon of your own next to a sea. They can't place another sea dragon next to one you already have on the board.
How does that relate to the snake?
Because it makes me think of like how it crashes into each other, and it's like a grid-like space. I don't know. That's as far as I've gotten with my theme connection.
That's fine.
But also, you don't want to go next to someone else's sea dragon as well because it gives them treasure. So it's just really this spatial puzzle, but it looks so beautiful from a table presence perspective because it's like very physical with all the sea dragons coming out of the water. It's really cool. I believe if you want to get a copy of this game, they're only going to have a limited number available at Essen Spiel, but definitely one I want to go and check out. It feels like just a really interactive, more social, lighter game, and I really enjoy that for having those games on hand where it's just easy to teach and people can get straight into it. So that is my number 6, Sea Dragons.
My number 6 is a game called Rebel Princess, which is a trick-taking game where you play as one of 5 famous princesses where you're trying to essentially avoid getting marriage proposals from Prince Charmings and remain single and independent by the end of 5 days or 5 rounds. So the way this game plays, it's a trick-taking game where you're going to actually there's essentially going to be some cards that are the Prince Charmings with their marriage proposals. And so those are the cards that you're trying to avoid because whoever obviously has the fewest proposals will be the winner. But then there's also a frog, like a magical frog card that comes with a surprise sort of 5 proposals in one prince. So I think it's going to be one of those games that I absolutely love this theme as a concept. I think it's so clever to use a trick-taking mechanic as the sort of core thing.
Of running away from men proposing to you?
Well, I mean, this is relatable content. But it's like, these princesses just want to hang out. Like, they just want to have a be free and be like independent, at least like just for these 5 days. Let us have these 5 days
with no proposals, please. Imagine if that was your biggest problem. Like, how do I get 5 days without being proposed
maybe that
to?
is the life of a princess.
Probably,
like that's
probably.
That's.
I love that theme.
Yeah,
love trick taking.
So
sounds good.
That's pretty much it. Like usually with trick taking games, is fairly like the theme is fairly straightforward. But I enjoy that as a concept because I can see the hilarity around the table going, no, like I got the frog or I got the and I believe you can I think it's probably going to be a combination of you can see what's going to be won that round, but also probably like surprising people with different bits and pieces. Sounds intriguing. Anyways, so that's my number 6, Rebel Princess.
My number 5 is a reprint, well, a second edition of an old game, and that is Shipyard by Vladimir Suchy. And Vladimir Suchy has 3 new game releases, including this one, I believe, at Essen Spiel. Now, this one isn't new. This is older game. I think it came out at Essen Spiel 2010. And so he talked in his designer diaries about revisiting this game and whether it still stood the test of time, and he thought it actually did.
Okay.
Now, for us, well, for me, I love a rondelle, and this game has multiple rondelles in it that you're trying to manage. And so for that reason, it's always been a game that I've wanted to try. It's just a game that you don't come across very often anymore. It's out of print, difficult to find, and I've never played it. And so this is my opportunity to get in and get this game. And there's been a couple of improvements. One is obviously they've redone all of the graphics and the illustrations, which is always welcome to give something a fresh lick of paint to bring it into modern times.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I believe it also comes with some kind of contraption in the box that organizes the tiles.
Oh,
so that's also very handy. Love that. Because we're very spoiled these days with all of our game trays and things.
Yeah.
So, help get the games to the table.
In order. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's also been, there was talk about whether he was rebalancing some of I think it's the government tiles that are some of the objective tiles, because some were easier to cash in than others, but instead what he's done is just included some rules around for your starting game. Here's how to distribute those to the players, because apparently this is one of those games that the more you play it, you can there's a bit of a learning curve in terms of how to optimize everything and do everything really well. And of course, thematically, you are in a shipyard and you're hiring workers and you're trying to put together your boats and something. But rondelles,
building ships, I would imagine.
Rondelles. But also what I've heard about this game is that it's probably best at 3, but it's really good at 2. And so and because the other element of this game is I've also heard that it's very much multiplayer solitaire.
Excellent.
And he has worked through this rondelle system all the way through to Woodcraft, which is a game of his that we absolutely adore. However, that is also a game that is very multiplayer solitaire, and for that reason, I prefer it at 2, because then I feel like at least this head-to-head battle is kind of over quickly, and then we can get back to comparing what we've done and things like that.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me.
So I feel like this is a game.
And then the turns are snappier, and so you kind of have more.
Yeah. So I feel like this is a game that probably has gone under Maggie's radar because thematically, it's probably not the most interesting thing.
And I was like, it looked big and Yuri, but it was the theme was building ships.
Yes. But I feel like you'll probably like the multiplayer solitaire element of it. And secondly, this second edition, this new edition, has a solo mode, and the original did not. And Vladimir Suchy has solo modes and has a philosophy around solo modes that is the less maintenance or the less facilitation that you have to do, the better.
Yes,
right? You love that.
Yes, please.
So that's his philosophy, which he's brought to Shipyard second edition, and he did in Woodcraft, because you loved Woodcraft solo.
I love the Woodcraft solo. It was
there you
so
go.
Easy to play, and it was just very satisfying, and you get to just explore the game, which is because then I guess then it's sort of more of a sign of games that are you against the game puzzle, more so than you against pivoting and adjusting to what other players are doing, aside from just if they're maybe if there's a central market or something that they may interfering with. But
so
excellent.
Heavy game, rondelles, good solo mode. I think you're going to like it. I think it'll end up on your list.
Intriguing.
Yeah. That is my number 5, Shipyard second edition.
My number 5 is Amy's number 8, and that is the game Evenfall, which is another witch-themed game where you are sending witches from your coven, essentially, to use through a range of card engine building and card management to discover and almost take control of different powerful locations. So there's going to be, depending on the number of players, different locations where you're going to be sending your witch meeples, workers into those locations. And then there's going to be a range of different tracks as well that will help you with things like arcane rituals, so performing arcane rituals. Then there's also going to be a battle which is almost like area control, where players who are in that area get to sort of secretly vote for their, like, essentially, I can't remember what the currency is or what the medium is that you're using, but how much of that you're going to be using, which is actually going to be limited by one of your tracks. So it's public information what your max limit would be. That gets added to the presence, so to how many meeples you have on that location, but you don't necessarily know how much that person, like the individual people around, are bidding. So there's that kind of element of hidden. What are you going to go all out and knock me out, or are we going to fight it out? So that's an interesting one. So ultimately, I think this one is one where I was most intrigued. Rado was losing his mind over this one.
Yeah, and sometimes we can have quite different tastes.
Sometimes, yeah.
But when he says you should check out a game for a reason, it's usually it's usually because there's something novel or interesting that's always worth checking out. And for me, it's not the parts that you described actually that I'm most intrigued about.
It's the theme, isn't it? It's the
No, I said not the parts that you mentioned, but it's the card management system that's kind of happening in your tableau, where you're putting some cards down that are going to help, that you're going to leverage to get resources. And so you're basically trying to exhaust these cards by using them over and over again. But once you've used them too much and they're complete or finished with, they move down and they become your end game scoring points. So kind of managing the timing of that to make sure that you can score them at the end. But also when they become end game scoring points, they also can become additional worker placement spots for your elder meeples that usually don't have much to do in the game. So you're also opening up your tableau to allow you to get more done in the game. And so that dynamic of the card play was that was definitely the most interesting thing to me, less so about like the secret bidding and stuff like that, but definitely in like how you manage that and the timing of that, I'm really intrigued by. So I love the cover of this game too.
I'm intrigued by the artwork, and I actually quite enjoy that sort of the theme of whenever there's anything like esoteric about a theme, I'm quite intrigued. So that is my number 5 and Amy's, and number 8, Evenfall.
My number 4 is a game called Footprints, and this is a game where you are basically cave people in the Ice Age, and you are trying to move across a modular board that is made up of different types of terrain. Now, I will say that this game is designed by the 2 designers who did Come Together, which was a game that really surprised and delighted us, really a worker placement game from last year. So that caught my attention. But also, this game is really intriguing in that every player has a slightly asymmetric deck of 14 cards, and you're going to be playing out these cards in your hand in a way that seems very tension-filled, because you need to play cards out of your hand to move through the different types of terrain on the board, and you're going to be wanting to do that to make etchings and to score points along the way. But also the same cards in your hand can be used differently in that they can help you upgrade your ability. So do you want to use a card for its immediate ability, or do you want to waste a card but like mean that your future actions are more powerful? So you're constantly weighing up that tension and trying to exploit different strategies in order to obviously come first in this game. The game ending can be triggered early if someone makes it to the end of that modular board. And what's interesting is you're talking about Rado. He's been one of the only people to do a preview of this game, and of course got me more excited about the game. But I think he said in passing, like, who would do that? Who would trigger the end game that way? This one. I would.
Every time.
I'm right like, where Maggie is in the front.
And then just like raced ahead and optimized the whole thing and just...
I do love a game that has that option. Like, am I in it for the long game, or am I doing something really quickly and then trying to end the game when, no one else can catch up? I kind of love that element. So for that reason, it made its way all the way up to number 4, and that is Footprints.
My number 4 is a game called Arborea, which is it's a beautiful, beautiful artwork as well. Same designer as Barcelona. And in this game, you are a patron spirit trying to guide the villagers onto different pilgrimage tracks to essentially help re-heal and regrow the land. And so the way this plays is it's a Euro worker placement, another worker placement. But the cool thing about this is you're going to be placing these workers onto these different little tracks, and those tracks are going to move and progress. So you're kind of putting the workers and you're leaving them there. And the further they go along, then the longer and more fruitful their pilgrimage path is going to be when they return home. So you can sort of see as you place them, as they're moving along, what are the elements that they're going to be able to pick up at each one of the stops along the way. The more people that go into a path and the more or into a track, the more that track has the potential to move. In even just the one turn. So that's really interesting. And then all those resources you're going to be using to essentially create these little ecosystems or environments in your player area that are then welcoming of animals. So ultimately, you're trying to kind of reheal the land so you can bring the flora and fauna back into the region. So it's got lots of other kind of like little Euro things and different tracks and bits and pieces, different ways of collecting points. So all of that, I think, I usually really tend to enjoy. But I think by far that the aesthetic of this game has been something that even from when we first sort of started, because this has been kind of doing the rounds for a while. Like it's a game that we've sort of seen
anticipated by you for quite a while.
And I just think it's going to be a fairly satisfying experience as well.
Actually,
I'm really intrigued by that.
We saw it at Gen Con and we were like, "Ooh, is that for sale?" They had one copy there, and they were like, "No." We're like, "Oh, okay. I guess we'll wait."
Yeah, we'll wait. And so, this is the time. So I'm excited to finally check it out. So that is Arborea, my number 4.
My number 3 is a game that, if it wasn't space themed, could very well be my number 1 on this list, but I've tempered it a bit because of that. And that is a game called Evacuation by Vladimir Suchy. Now, that's the second Vladimir Suchy game on my list, and I've loved some of his designs and some of his designs not so much, but this one, the premise is so cool mechanically, because the way that he started the thought process of this game was, in Euro games, you're always trying to build up your production, build up your civilization, your world, your town, your farm, whatever it is, so that you build up to getting more and more resources. And so the starting point for this game was, what if you started with everything and then it all started to like degrade and go away? And he thought, you know what, that's interesting, but not very motivating. Pretty sad to see something crumble down. So instead, he's created this system where you're trying, basically the theme explains it well. You are starting at one planet where you're completely set up. You've got a thriving community where you're generating lots of resources, but all of a sudden you need to evacuate this planet and move to a new planet where you are starting from nothing. And so what you're doing in this game is shifting your production from one planet to the other. You're slowly moving across and trying to build up the second location to be your new home. But what's really cool about it is that the resources that you're generating in planet A cannot be used in planet B.
Inconvenient.
It is inconvenient. So it's like this kind of U-shaped arc to the story where you've got this engine running, and then for a while, when you're between planets, everything is depleted and you're scraping by, and then you start to come out the other end because now your production's up and running on the second planet. Just love that concept. I really love that concept. I think that it's so different. And also the border's really cool. It's got the two planets. It has this track that runs between them. And there's something to do with placing cards on that track, and you are summing the points, and they're worth more at one end of the track than the other because of the way they interact with the planet. But yeah, I'm super intrigued by it. And I just love hearing about that design process. There hasn't been a lot of information, there's been no reviews or anything of this game. I'm hoping they have it at Essen. They're saying that they will. So I'm really excited to pick this up. It's just, space aside, I just it's more of a civilization building game. I think that's it. That's my way of explaining away the theme. But I'm just really intrigued by that feeling of mid-game being now I've got nothing, and then
because usually you have something that progresses, and you sort of start with nothing and you start getting more and more powerful, and then you're and then by the time that you're I am doing great, that's the end of the game. So it's you're ending on a high.
I am rich, and then it's uh-oh.
So it's riches to rags
back.
to riches.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay.
So that is my number 3, Evacuation.
My number 3 is a game called Black Friday, which is another Friedman Freeze game. I'm surprised that there was the like a non-F word to the start of the game. I guess because it actually is referring to like a stock market crash of like Black Friday. But this is actually a re-implementation of an update, I should say, of a game, a 2010 game, again by Friedman Freeze, called Black Friday. So the name stayed the same, but apparently there's a couple of changes to the gameplay, and the artwork appears to be new.
Wait, is this one solo?
No. This is this is a competitive stock market type game where you're all going to be buying and selling stocks and trying to sort of time. So as you're, it's got this really, really interesting way of tracking the cost of silver. So one of the main things that you're going to be doing as you're, the reason for generating all this money as you're buying and selling stocks is to exchange it for silver. And eventually there's a lot of different things that are going to be increasing the price of silver up until the point where it reaches the end of that track, and that triggers the end of the game. The thing that I find really interesting is apparently this is a fairly thinky stock market type game. It's got a little bit more of like the sort of maths and calculations, but also every kind of round, the way that there's sort of like a random draw from a bag of the different colors that represent the different stocks. And then the way it's sort of, the way the price is, the stock price shifts, it's just this really intriguing central board where the price is just like the numbers are kind of placed and the stock will move up or left or right, and then that'll determine the different prices.
Oh, like a little network kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's not really a network because it's just like a grid of all these numbers. But yeah, it's like, for example, if it came out 3 times, and obviously there's going to be that, plus also as you're selling and buying, that'll also obviously affect the market. Yeah, it'll say move the token up, like for the value of it up twice and then to the right once. Okay. And so then the price that it'll land on, I'm really intrigued to see how that sort of plays out. So yeah, I don't know why, but I really, really enjoy stock market type games and economic games. And we haven't really done a lot of 18xx. This is not, I don't want to say this is an 18xx. No. It's not a train game, but it is obviously stock market driven. They have updated the artwork. I would say it's better. I don't know if absolutely it's like, it's essentially just, you just got this like the stockbroker sort of doing the whole because it's sort of like the that crash. But it's a very,
I mean, I feel like the publisher's artwork is a bit quirky.
It's
at
quirky,
the best of times.
Yeah, and the aesthetic is kind of consistent with their kind of quirky stylings. So so I'm intrigued and excited to try out Black Friday, and that is my number 3.
Now, even though Maggie and I have very diverging tastes since starting this channel, most of our top 10s are generally pretty different these days. We agree entirely on number 2 and number 1 on our list here. We do agree on a good Euro, and my number 2 and Maggie's number 2 is Nucleum. This is the new game by David Turchi and Simon Luciani, who has now had 3 games appear on our list.
Yeah,
so
very prolific.
Been very busy. Yeah. But this game has been described as a mashup of a number of different games. Oh, why don't you explain the theme?
Yeah, so it's like 19th century alternative reality steampunk sort of world, and you're finding yourself you wanted to become the leader of the new industrial revolution, and there's this sort of Nucleum is sort of this nuclear reactor is kind of like the source of energy that's being used for everything. And so that's the thing that you're going to be trying to build networks for, to transport that electricity and build and power up different buildings and things like that.
So this game has been described as a cross between Brass Birmingham, Barrage,
the network building, and Barrage,
and also
Power as well.
And also Concordia. And there are different elements of these games that they're not a direct copy of those games, but some of the mechanics are similar. So basically what you're going to be doing is building out buildings and building out train lines. But what's really interesting is that whole system interacts with the action tiles that you have. And you have these action tiles that you can use, obviously, to take an action, or you can kind of dispose of them in order to build train track. So you're already having having to make that difficult decision. And I guess if you are getting rid of a lot of action tiles to turn them into track, well, then you're going to have to refresh more often because you've got fewer action tiles, and refreshing takes a whole turn that is going to slow you down. So I feel like that's an interesting dynamic. You also have to kind of connect your own buildings and your own train lines, I believe. And so you need to build out that network in order to be able to access different parts of the board.
You also be able to unlock asymmetric ability. So all kind of like barrage style, you had different players will have an asymmetric kind of technology that can be unlocked throughout the game, essentially. So I think, there's a lot of different components that I think are going to make for a really, really satisfying Euro experience.
We were very lucky to meet David Turchi, who was at Gen Con and is just so passionate about gaming.
So much energy.
So much
just
energy.
Like mind that goes a million miles an hour.
And he took over an hour to just talk to us about games, but he also described Nucleum, and he said, he's proud of all of his things that he works on, but this one was like one of the designs that he's like most excited about, and very happy to have worked with Simone on kind of perfecting. And so I'm really excited about that design duo to see what comes out of it.
I enjoy that he said it's like his favorite thing is talking about games. The designing is more just like a means to an end. It's like designing the games gives you an excuse or a reason to talk about games. But like that, so obviously someone who's very, very, just lives and breathes.
Very passionate.
This.
And also when you look at this game on the table, it's just like that classic Euro combination of, what do I unlock and what does that do? And building this network, like it looks super Euro-y, but also it has the same graphic designer as Maggie correctly instantly picked out.
I was like, this feels very Great Western Trail.
Great Western Trail.
It's like, it's the same graphic designer. It's like, there you go.
So this iconography will be very familiar to you if you're a Euro gamer. Yes, excited to check this one out. This is one that you can pre-order from Board and Dice, which I will probably do just to make sure I'm not rushing against the crowds. So that is our number 2, Nucleum.
And our number 1 is a game called Planta Nubo, which is by the design team behind La Granja and Uwe Rosenberg.
What a great farming combination.
This is like farming game heaven. So in this game, we're going to be essentially building gardens in the sky to try and increase oxygen production. It's a sort of solar punk setting and theme, which I love. That's probably one of my favorite settings. Is the solar punk, where it's a sort of like ecological, usually
almost
a little bit post-apocalyptic when like there's a bit of there's technology that survived, but also like nature has kind of had to like overpower that. So I love the setting.
Yeah, it's a great theme, but also mechanically there is not a lot to say here because there's been no rule book that's been announced. There's not a lot of information to go on, but I did get a sneak peek through just a forum on BGG that mentioned that it is a combination of the puzzle from the polyomino tile type puzzle from like a Feast for Odin or Patchwork combined with the layered puzzle of Cooper Island. And we love Feast for Odin and we love polyomino tiling, but Cooper Island is a game that is in our collection that we actually really enjoy.
I really enjoyed it,
But
it's very unforgiving though. It's
very heavy.
Tough, heavy.
Very heavy and very unforgiving, which makes it not a great game to get out onto the table very often, especially with a new group of gamers, because just explaining the game... Anyway, that game is a lot, but this one is meant to be a toned down version of that, combined with Uwe's classic polyomino style puzzle.
Now this is all hearsay, like this is, none of this has been confirmed. This is kind of like, it's sort of elements or things. But
I think those elements have been confirmed, but how they come together, we have no idea. No idea how this game plays. And, it's pretty close to Essen Spiel. So it's sort of a little bit surprising when you're like, there is no information about this game. They must have printed it.
It should be printed by now. And potentially delivered, if not like...
One other thing is that there is a companion book for this game as well. So, but also no information about that. So somehow the theme kind of extends into a world. So very interested to see how those things come together.
A lot of it is around that sort of eco-conservation. And so there's going to be a lot, I imagine, around that. So
yes,
I know,
which
like,
has been a big focus of Uwe Rose.
yeah,
of
it's
late.
very interested in, like, you know, reforestation and things like that. So it makes sense to me. So I'm excited. I don't mind that, you know, there's been a lot of mystery and intrigue around how but it's like Hype alone, like, just, you know,
I mean, the combination of designers makes this almost just an auto purchase for us.
It's
just
like
because,
I have to try it, have to experience it, and have to go there. Like, every single time I play anything that, you know, Uwe has been involved in, I always see, like, oh yeah, that's very clever. That's a really, so yeah.
Excited to try it out, but sorry we don't have more information. Hopefully we will get a copy of it and be able to review it on the channel to give you all of that insight into what it's actually like. But that is our number one, Planta.
Well, we keep
Nubo.
fighting about this one. So
Not
it's
fighting.
But we're
Fighting's a bit extreme.
arguing about. So it's Planta Nubo. And I said Nubo, and she was like, that's not it. Like, as a Spanish-speaking person, like, we kind of do the B's and the V's.
Yeah, she's like,
fairly
Nubo. I'm like, no, it's
interchangeably.
Nubo. And she's
And
like, what's the difference?
If anything, Nubo would almost make more sense, because Nubo is kind of like reminiscent of, like, new, which is what you're doing. Like, you're generating new plants. Anyways.
Are you done?
The game is Planta Nubo.
Yeah, the game is Planta Nubo, and we're finished with our list.
Let's move on.
You know, we hope that you enjoyed this list and it's going to be helpful in creating your own list for Essen Spiel, or just to stay across some of the new releases until the end of the year. I feel like my job is done in convincing Maggie on some of the games on my list, so now she feels...
Actually, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah.
I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we started the channel. It's just so I could convince Maggie
of
my purchases. Long game.
This is the long game.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.